All right, I think we are live. Hi, this is Suchitra Vijayan, and you're joining us for Polis Project's Five Object Podcast. Five Objects podcast has always been one of the favorite things that we do at Polis because it's not just another interview. It's about getting to know the artists, writers, the filmmaker, and placing them within the larger intellectual, political, and the histories that they come from. So we ask our guests to bring five objects that have shaped their life and work, and these objects then become the basis for a free flowing conversation. So we are back, and I'm thrilled that we begin again, and this time with filmmaker Varsha Bharath. Varsha's debut film, Bad Girls, has not only received critical acclaim, but it has sparked conversations about how we tell stories about female protagonists that is both unfiltered, raw, but also in some ways authentic. Rom-coms have always been foundational to storytelling in cinema and across time and geography. But what really fascinated me about Bad Girl is how Varsha centers the female gaze while also capturing something that's deeply personal to me. I was born and raised in Madras, and in some ways, I think it's a story about coming of age in the early 2000s, pre Facebook, pre Orkut. In some ways, I'm just really excited to be in this conversation. And joining me today to co host this is our Polis Project's brilliant contributing writer, Aditya Shrikrishna. Aditya, before we dive into the five objects, I know that you and I had a really great conversation about Varsha's film, your review, but I was wondering if you can frame the film. And I also know that you had some questions for Varsha before we jump into the five objects.
Yeah, I think Bad Girl. I would say it's like a breath of fresh air in Tamil cinema. Like we haven't had this kind of a coming of age film in a long time. I would say it's not just because of the women director or a female protagonist. Even otherwise, in all things considered, I think we've had very few films like this in the last several years. And especially in the last few years, it's been kind of getting saturated. We've reached saturation point in terms of the kind of film we see in Tamil. So I think it's a breath of fresh air. And other thing is this. Another thing that I love about this film is the journey of the film. Like it went to Rotterdam, it won the Netback Award, and then as we know in Tamil cinema, we like to brand something a festival film. But then much later, when I watched it, I saw that it's a very mainstream film. Like you actually have a whistle-worthy theater moments in the film. And that's one of the reasons it's actually clicked with a lot of audience as well. And so that's actually what I wanted to ask Varsha first, because the journey of the film has been a roller coaster. Like the Rotterdam premiere, before that, all the reactions to the trailer, and then the award in Rotterdam, and then much later, after all the other festival screenings, you had a release, and then you had a Hindi release. So I'm sure there's been different experiences. So if you could share with us about that.
Yeah, you mentioned that there were whistle-worthy moments, and therefore it worked in the theater. But I would, apologies for starting on such a negative note, but I don't think the film has done very well theatrically in terms of commerce. Fall has been pretty average to, you know, like I wouldn't say it's a commercially successful film, considering that people did love it. Like everybody who and I actually, at least in Chennai, I went to a lot of the screenings and tried to have conversations with the audiences after they walked out to genuinely understand. So a lot of people, everyone seemed to love the film across all age groups, and very surprisingly, older men, like much older men. Everybody seemed to love the film, but the footfall in the theaters was quite low, I would like to say. But apart,
Just to add to that, but I think that is also a different. That's also more of a the release strategy and time and all those things, right? Like it's what I meant was like you have the film has these moments, so we can release in the theaters. That sort of a thing. But how it does
yeah,
is
exactly.
different.
Yeah, no. So for me, I had like certain, although before release, I didn't really care to admit it. I was hoping deep down that I understand that stories without like a big hero's face don't really have that kind of great opening. But I was hoping for some magic or virality to happen where the film really picks up, which didn't happen. And now that the theatrical run is over, it's out of theaters. I still have a lot of people reaching out to me and telling me they wish that the film was still in theaters so they could watch it. But the thing is, it's about the numbers, right? Not enough people showed up within those 2 weeks, and you don't really get a shot at it after beyond those 2 weeks. Some films are like that, right? You won't have a packed theater all the time, but you just need to give them time to, which is why multiplex culture doesn't really support films like these. Multiplexes can only accommodate big films, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, that's what happened with the film. But like you said, there's also like bigger forces like market strategy and those things. I guess those things just go over my head. I don't even understand numbers and that sort of thing. But I just thought, if something works for the audience, something clicks, it's just going to work in terms of numbers as well. Turns out that's not how it works.
Yeah. And if you could add the experience from Rotterdam to here, so if you could
Oh
share
yes.
something about that.
So Rotterdam was magical. 3 days after my trailer released, and there was a lot of furor over, the trailer and the content. But then we went off to Rotterdam. It was me, Anjali, the lead actor, Shanti Priya, who plays her mother, and my editor Radha, my EP Vikram. All of us just went to Rotterdam, and we had ourselves a great time to begin with, because we needed it, because the kind of reactions that the trailer got here, we knew there would be some resistance from some sections of the society, but the things they were saying were frankly a
Yeah.
little, we did not see that coming. Uh, so Rotterdam was really a welcome break, because I don't know how we would have dealt with all of the hate if not for that. And we went there, and the film is really a warm movie. It's
Hmm.
not something that aims to demonize any community or any gender whatsoever. So it gave us a little more perspective and validation to see have so many audiences see it. We had packed shows, like we had 4 screenings, and all of the shows were packed. And we also carried a little bit of insecurity, because it's a pretty pacey film, and there's a lot of music,
Yeah.
there's a lot of, it's pretty loud and edgy, right? So it's not a typical art house film.
Yeah.
And
It's an edgy film, but it's an Indian film. Yeah.
exactly. So I went there with a lot of like, and I also have always had a lot of people telling me, oh, you women, your films anyway get into film festivals. And it made me wonder, is that why I'm here? Because I'm a woman. But it's really not that, right? It's just that I recently spoke to the curator who picked my film for Rotterdam, and he said, it doesn't matter anymore. You just need to make a great film. These labels of festival film and mainstream film, those lines are getting
Yeah.
pretty blurry.
Yeah.
So the journey has been quite fascinating, because seeing people who are so different from us watch this film and connect with it is pretty amazing. Yeah, like the level to which they connected it quite took us aback. And they got all of the cultural references,
Hmm.
like all of the smaller cultural references, about periods, about when the girl asks her boyfriend, does your family make eggs, about vegetarianism, and about, they understood the concept of caste. So all of those I thought subtitles may not do justice translating all of these things, but somehow they got everything, and they got all of the cultural humor as well.
Yeah. And I think also the reason why the film travels is because today we
Yeah.
have a global audience, or at least the audience that come to these films might not understand caste or vegetarianism or Brahminism in its entirety, but everybody has been in these relationships with the other, or have been into these relationships where we just don't bring ourselves, or there are these ideological battles that one has to fight, which is interesting. It plays out very differently, right? Because our prejudices come out. The way love, desire, lust is like deeply enmeshed with that is also, I think, something it plays out, right? It's something that I
Correct.
feel is universal.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, and that also brings us to the first of the five objects. And this is something that I'm both Aditya and I were very, very interested in, because you said the first object that you picked was photos of gods that covered every inch of wall in my childhood home, my
Yeah.
exposure to art and childhood. And we were like, was your house really covered in so? And we were like, is it like Tanjore paintings? Is it just like
Yeah.
calendar?
We were wondering what is it like, because you said art. Yeah.
We were like, what's happening?
Yeah, so I think about this a lot because my exposure to art really began as absence of art in my life. There was absolutely no exposure to art or the importance of art in the early stages of my childhood, right until at the point where I was at school. Like the home where I grew up was like you would have loose wires hanging everywhere, cobwebs, and not out of neglect, but that was the lifestyle and that was accepted. It's not just my family, even in our extended families I have not grown. Aesthetics was not a big, it did not play an important role in our lifestyle. It was just a home was a space for dwelling. It was very functional, it was very practical. Even now I find myself, I mean, I'm in a hotel room now, this is not my house, this is not how I live. I do not know how to shop for something that's not functional, because I think it's played such a big part in my upbringing, has sort of shaped what I feel is worth spending money on. And art is a luxury, right? And I if now I would probably pick something that's beautiful,
Mhm.
provided it also serves a functional purpose in the household. Like just going and picking an object for the sake of art is not something that comes naturally to me. So absence of art, I think, shaped my childhood. And now when I visit people and their walls have art and there's something intentional going on there, in my house I remember we would just not throw away things that were like all of these calendars, right? Annual calendars, god's photos in it. Like the year would be over, you'd be done, peeling away those daily dates,
The day
but the
calendars.
calendar would just stay, and one on top of another on top of another, just like with absolutely no importance for aesthetics. So I think about this a lot of late, and I find that very interesting how there is a large section of our society, and I also try to capture that on camera to a certain degree.
Mhm.
Uh, uh, how there are lots of homes where things are just lying around. It's messy because, when you have a working mother, and when aesthetics is not even something that crosses one's mind.
Yeah.
So I
And
think, yeah.
no, no, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
And religion is everything, faith is everything. Like the only art I was exposed to was faith, right? Like the music that you, of course, as a child, you get sent to music class and dance class, and it typically tends to be because of the community I come from, Bharatnatyam or Carnatic music, which also I developed a very early aversion to because of the form of the teaching, the pedagogy, like just how it works was just not very stimulating, I guess, for a child, right? So all of those things I think really shaped my early years and my need to sort of run really far away from that.
Yeah, but also you're a filmmaker, right? And as a filmmaker, every screen, every frame is an aesthetic choice.
Correct.
So from you say that you grew up without aesthetics. From that to when you became a filmmaker, where did you learn this aesthetics, or where did you inform yourself? Because even the lack of aesthetics is in some ways an aesthetics, right? So
Yes, it is. Yeah.
when you become a film, when you make your films, you're now making choices about how a scenes should look, how this one, how can you kind of talk us through then how did you learn to acquire the aesthetics that you have right now?
So the part of the absence of aesthetics that I have embraced is especially a big part of my feminist politics, which is that women don't necessarily need to look nice all the time, especially,
Mhm.
like right now, this is the first time in my entire adult life that I've been exposed to the camera so much and constantly being photographed. It's never happened to me before, because through my adult life I've not been in any kind of social media until my trailer came out. I've not been on social media. After college I quit everything. So for me it's very strange to see myself even, and I have uh, when you start working in the industry, you also do this thing where you try to be a bro. You just try to become a dude because you want to be taken seriously, and you feel like the only way to be taken seriously is to let go of your femininity. So it's absence of aesthetics also sort of seeped into my personality in that sense, where I don't really know how to give importance to that particular aspect. It doesn't come very naturally to me. So when I portrayed a woman on screen who I feel should represent the larger public, one of the things that I always told my team was, let's have a girl look the way that people feel like they're okay already. Like nobody should aspire for glass skin looking at Ramya. I didn't want anyone to aspire to have amazing hair. We made intentional choices about having really thin hair. I remember when we were looking back at photographs from school, when you split your hair into and make braids, it's usually this thick. But like if you look at every movie, women have such thick hair because you have extensions, and that's. I feel like that's you feel really ugly growing up because all of these images you're looking at, there's no way you can aspire to recreate in your own life. Your skin's never going to look like that. Your hair's never going to look like that.
No.
So I felt like I had those absence of aesthetic choices also seeped into this thing where a lot of people just didn't care about these things. There
Mm.
was a very large section of the society that didn't focus on that,
Yeah.
and that's what I wanted to. That's the area where I wanted to dwell.
On
And
that, I just want to add something that my friend told me. My friend said that the pimples on the Anjali on
yeah,
Ramya were like super natural. Like she was like, I don't know how they did it with makeup, but they were real.
yeah, kudos to my makeup artist Pavna. She's fantastic. She made like these little silicone things and filled it with curd so it would pop. Like she filled it with a little bit of pus like curd, and that was a yeah. And acne is so important, right? Because we grow up thinking acne is so abnormal, but it's such a normal part of growing up. Everybody had acne. I still have acne, so it's like such a normal part of our lives. So, and in about the photos of gods in particular, I used to have this thing. I didn't manage to translate it entirely on screen, but this there used to be this thing in childhood where every time I used to always have trouble sleeping, even as a child, and I would look up at the walls and there's gods everywhere. There was one big photo of Sai Baba always looking at me, and I would find that if I looked at him with a smile on my face, he would smile back, and if I glared at him, he would glare back. If I looked at him with sadness, he would look at me with sadness. And later I found out that it's a very common phenomenon for a lot of people to look at some images and it would look back at them with the same. Did you guys know about this?
I have
No.
no
You should go experiment. Just go back home and just try this out. But apparently it's a very normal phenomenon. I thought it was just me growing up, and writing the script gave me the vocabulary to like question a lot of things that
See, the only time I've heard that is, when you're told about the Mona Lisa, you're always told that the Mona
yeah,
Lisa will reflect back to you how you're feeling. And
yeah,
I remember, like, for the first time going and seeing it, it was like how it wasn't that aha moment, but it was this really shitty part of that, museum where there are like 100 other people there and you can barely see it. There's a glass case and you're like, I can barely see Mona Lisa's eyes. But I think that's the only time I've actually heard about the painting reflecting your sense. But I think this is something, um, I don't know. I've never,
yeah,
um, yeah, no, I've never, but also because I feel like I grew up in a pretty mixed atheist household in which, my grandfather was a communist. My dad was not a particularly a believer. My mom, I don't know, she was religious, but really never forced us. So everything religious would go inside this one little puja room, and half of it would be pictures of your elders and then all kinds of other things, and then it'll be shut.
yeah,
Uh, and yeah, so for me, the experience was completely different because, my mom fell in love with a boy who was much poorer than her. And, then, and then when she made home within very limited capacities, her aesthetics is very different. And I realized that we all inherit the aesthetics that we grow up with.
yeah,
Um, but the other thing that I wanted to kind of also ask you is the casting of the film.
yeah,
The casting that I think the mother somehow, I know that your the main lead, the Anjali, and the protagonist has been discussed. I actually liked the mother,
yeah.
the aesthetics, the way that she looks on screen, the moments of helplessness, the moments of just sheer. How did that come? Is that's all, and also the way you present the mother is also an aesthetic choice, right? So how did that come about?
So I just struggle to find artists, first of all, who didn't have their eyebrows done, because that's sort of like it just changes
Right.
everything. Right? So like for the grandmother especially, even people that anybody who's ever been in front of the camera has had their eyebrows done, and
Okay.
that's such a deal breaker for me. I mean, Shanti Priya ma'am did also get her eyebrows done through her life, but she was willing to just let it grow out.
Okay.
I think it just makes you look a certain way when you have your eyebrows done. But I wanted to represent a section of the society where women have never ever stepped into a beauty parlor. Like they've never gotten a haircut. They've never really done anything to their face. It's not something that ever crosses their mind. Their idea of beautification is keeping a puttu, maybe some poo, and like oiling
Mhm.
their hair and just combing it at home. And these are not things that they think they spend a lot of time thinking about, right? So I wanted to represent that. And also I was very particular from the start. I wanted a really gaunt faced mother who looks like she has been neglecting herself, like
Mhm.
someone who's just not been taking good care of herself, because she's always hustling, taking care of everyone else, and sort of neglecting her own needs. So that's why, and I also wanted someone who looked exactly like Ramya in terms of jawline. So they look like two sides of the
Mhm.
same coin, right? Like had a lot of shots where both of them were just equal and opposite, because
Mhm.
that's exactly what they are. And so that's why Shanti Priya ma'am worked out so well. And also she is someone who has been a bit of a bad girl growing up. She eloped from her house and got married, and she's very very cool.
She also
But
had shaven off at one point in time, right? I remember seeing her interview of her where she was
yeah,
bald and just stunning. She was, I think she was wearing like um, I think she was wearing like a very casual jeans and a top. And for a minute, I didn't recognize who this was. And I was like, who's this stunning woman? Like,
yeah,
just air. And then I was just like, I didn't know who this was. And then I had to, then I was like, but I remember the face from my childhood. But then I was like, this was a
yeah,
stunning, gorgeous woman.
My pet peeve has been all the young fans not knowing who Shanti Priya is.
yeah, yeah.
Uh,
So actually, fun fact, I didn't know who she was. My father
Okay,
knew.
that's amazing.
Yeah, like I went back home and I'm like, oh, I finally found because I had been trying to hunt for faces for a while, and casting took a while. And I told my parents, oh, I finally found the artist to play the mother. And I told them it was Shanti Priya, Bhanupriya's sister. They were like, what? Do you mean Nishanti? I was like, no, her name is
Mm.
Shanti Priya. They were like, no, her name is Nishanti. And turns out, and then I did my research, and then I asked her, are you the same person who was called Nishanti? She's like, yes. And that's how when I first cast her, I had no idea.
yeah.
Yeah.
And that brings us to the second object, which is the countless Sweet Valley books that you read. And the clincher for me was the Rajeshwari Lending Library, which is also the okay. Do you want to, Varsha? Do you want to give a background for those of people who
Go
might
for it. Go for it. You do it. Yeah.
the Rajeshwari? What is Rajeshwari Lending Library? Before we go to what Sweet Valley Twins is, Aditya, do you know the Rajeshwari Lending Library? Since you're also
Both are, I think, kind of not my story. I think I'll let you both talk about the books and the library.
So Ishwari Lending Library is a chain of lending libraries in Chennai. They have branches across the city. They have more and more branches now, actually.
yeah.
But I actually wonder if it's legal. Quite frankly, I don't know, because is our lending libraries? I don't know. Recently, someone told me it's not okay to lend books in libraries.
I don't know. I think
Yeah.
wait.
I mean, they were everywhere. Like I was going to a Murugan Lending Library in
Yeah,
Chennai, so it was everywhere.
Murugan Lending Library is part of Ishwari as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, but Rajeshwari Lending Library was home. Every Sunday, our father would take us. He would take his Clive Cussler type novels, and my brother would read his Amar Chitra Kathas and that sort of a thing. And I would binge on Sweet Valleys, the Sweet Valley books. I started off with Twins and Friends, and then High, and then Junior High. So I think that's when I actually started reading. My exposure to reading came from reading those books. And the thing about reading Sweet Valley is it's the first time I actually felt like books like Sweet Valley or shows like Lizzie McGuire are the only exposure to teen drama and teen romance and like problems faced by women. That was the only exposure I had growing up to, girlhood. Because there's absolutely nothing about girlhood with women that looked like me. So there is a strange sort of alienation that happens when you're reading something that you connect with deeply on one hand,
Mhm.
and on the other hand they have locker rooms and they have gyms and they have all of that, which you don't. You're lugging around a school bag. It was so different and yet so similar. And I think my need to make chick flicks also comes from that deep yearning that I had in my childhood, which I didn't even know was a yearning I had in my childhood, where I just wanted more stories. Because also growing up in all these conservative schools, you often don't really express yourself to
Right.
your friends. You don't there I know for a fact that men used to talk about things such as masturbation or sexuality and all of those things in extremely toxic ways. Those are not healthy sex ed type conversations that men had, but at least there was a space because they would exchange pornography.
Right.
There used to be a famous Burma Bazaar where kids would go and buy those DVDs. But at least men had that outlet, right? Of course, it was demonized. It was not at all healthy, the way they consumed it or the way they learned about romance was really quite messed up. I almost don't blame them for being the people they are, a lot of them, because
Yeah.
that's the kind of exposure they had at a very young age. But for women, it was just like it was just like, no, you cannot talk about it. It was taboo for us to, you know, have any kinds of at least the place that I came from. It's only when I went to a girls' college later that I realized that women, in the absence of men, were a whole different breed. Like studying in a co-ed school all my life and then going to a girls college is what gave me that whole feeling of sisterhood finally, which was missing all my life. Because when the schools that I went to, there was this of course I had friends and I had good friends too, but there was always this undercurrent that was very strange and that I didn't know how to process when I was a child.
Yeah, and it's very interesting you say that because I was listening to a podcast with a with a child psychologist who
Mm-hmm.
said that the best outcomes for a girl child is to go to an all female school. Women
I'm
who go to all female schools always have better outcomes, and boys who go to co-education schools always have better outcomes. And the psychologist was like,
So
maybe
girls have to pay the price for boys to have good development, basically.
so. I was just listening to it. I was, my parents, one of the, because when I was growing up, all of my cousins had gone to predominantly female only Christian or schools, and my parents were like, "Oh, no, no, no! I think we want our daughters to go to co-education schools so that they then get a sense of, we don't want them. We want them to learn how to interact with boys." Of course, they picked the worst school in the world to put us in, but and that's one thing. The second thing is, I remember growing up in a time where even when you looked, on days when you just even looked a little nice, your teachers would say the nastiest things to you, and you were a child, and they would just say things like, "Oh, why are you dressed up like a cinema star to come to the school?" And all that you would have done was maybe washed your face and put on a put, as against turning up to school without washing your face. And there was a lot of this very nasty sexualization of young girls early on. There was a lot of just mean spiritedness when it really comes to young girls, at least the madras that I grew up in. So I think for me, the other thing with Sweet Valley Twins is that I used to go to Rajesh Rishwari Lending Library, and the man who would lend the books refused to give me the books. For the longest of time, I wanted to read the book, but he just refused, even with my mom. He just refused. Oh, I think
Yeah.
Varsha is here. I think, Varsha, we're having some tech difficulties.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, I think we do have questions from the audience. We have one question that says, a question for Varsha, which says that I know you worked as an AD in Vada Chennai. Can you share some instance? Um, should we just quickly check in on Varsha? And in the meantime, Aditya, I know that you looked at the film. Are there things about the film, especially the review that you talk about, that you want to speak till Varsha joins us back?
Yeah, I think the film, like everything that it stands for, like it's about this person, this uh, a character that we don't see often in Tamil cinema. In fact, we haven't seen a coming of age film about women protagonists in a long time in Tamil cinema, and we also don't see characters like this in Tamil cinema. We don't see a sexually liberated woman. We don't see a woman questioning her parents or authorities, or having the kind of arguments that she has with her boyfriends, or even the conversation that she has with her girlfriends. These things don't happen in Tamil mainstream cinema as often as they should. We all love to say that like Tamil cinema is better than so many languages in so many other film industries in India. But I think there are a lot of spaces where the industry is lacking. We do keep making these mainstream blockbusters that are really all male centric, and our industry is very star oriented. So are other industries, but they have spaces to tell stories like Bad Girl. Like if you take Hindi cinema, you will have a film like Bad Girl, like many films like Bad Girl in a year. But that's why the existence of Bad Girl the way it does in Tamil cinema, I think it's a huge boost for the industry itself.
I think Varsha is just calling. Can I just take the call?
Sure.
I just take the call. Hello. Hey, Varsha. There was a small technical glitch, and Varsha's coming back. Um, till Varsha comes back, I do want to pick up on one of the other things that you said, Aditya, about we all talk about the Tamil cinema industry being progressive, how it's like, we have this new breed of filmmakers who are, breaking ground. But in reality, we do know that even in some of the most progressive film sets, there is a lot of misogyny. There is a lot of anti-women. These are not sets, or these are not films, or even as a film fraternity. These are not safe spaces for women, or especially people who might not have those opinions.
And also, when you consider the crew in Bad Girl, like you have it has women in the crew, front and behind the camera. So it's like, and that is one of the main reasons that we don't get more films like this. Like, and we don't have like the women in Tamil cinema's crew is like it's quite abysmal. Like if you look at often, I think there was even an article about it sometime back when people share a wrap up picture of a movie. You see only men in the picture. So it's almost like a regular thing in Tamil cinema, and that it's very slowly changing, but it has to pick up, I think.
Yeah. And also, I think when Varsha was talking about the numbers not being there,
Yeah.
do you
Yeah.
think there is also a very particular way in which resources are put towards certain films as against the other? Have you seen films that are really great, just not doing well because they don't have enough resources being put in there?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, right? So even if a film is great, even if the people who ended up watching in the theaters really loved it, there are too many factors that go into a film becoming like getting its money back or making a profit. There are so many strategies that go into when you release it, how you release it, how you market it. You can't just put something in the theaters and then expect that if this is good, it will do well. I mean, we have had this year that some small films in Tamil, like Tourist Family and a couple of others, have done well, but they've also come with some backing, some some word of mouth or some better marketing strategy. And also, so there are too many things in play, and also the timing of the release and whether it's releasing with something else. So many things go into this factor, and now the business is really changing. Like people really want to make the biggest film so that they can get the biggest profit. Like the small film, the mid-budget film that you can just make, release, and then you can with a decent run you can get back the money. That kind of business is really gone. Like for example, we are in an industry where they are talking about Kamal Hassan and Rajinikanth acting together, and that being more plausible than someone making a mid-budget film with not the tier 1 star or with the tier 2 star. So it's like they're talking about that because that's what works and that's what they think can market, and then we can get the money back just through sheer hype. The film need not even be good. So we are talking about an industry that is in that kind of a flux stage. So I think when the situation is like that, it's very difficult for films like Bad Girl. Last year we had another film that went to festivals like P.S. Vinodra's Kotakali. So that also released, that also got a theatre release, but it didn't really do well. So I think there are too many factors that go into a film doing well, but the industry is definitely not in the most healthiest state for these films to be made and also get their money back when they do end up in theaters.
We actually have an audience question, and I'm just going to take it before Varsha logs in. We're just checking in to make sure that Varsha can come back in. Let me just okay. So the comment and the question that we have is: Bad Girl was a really good movie in a really long time. The last good movie that came out was Rocky by Arun Madheswaran. Is there any way to make a good movie entertaining without it flopping? Aditya, I'm putting it square.
I cannot answer that question. There have been many movies, many really good movies that have like done really well, like done really well too. Like so, I wouldn't say that if you put out a good movie, they're always going to flop or they're not always not going to be entertaining. But I think it's more of a business thing that frankly, like Varsha, I would say that we are people who really don't understand the complete business side of things. But it need not be this way. I think at some point people need to realize that for an industry to function well, they need to tell different kind of stories, and to tell different kind of stories, they need to put money on different kind of films. They can't just make one kind of film. We've seen that happen with Hollywood. Like you do all these superhero movies, you do all these big films, and then you completely alienate a kind of audience. Like why are audience who's watching Bad Girl loving it? Because there are it's a film like Bad Girl is bringing really audience that have actually stayed away from theaters. So I think when you have films that are across the slate with different subjects, you will bring different kind of audiences. At this point, I think you have only the hero crazy audience that are actually going to films on a weekend, and a section of audience is completely alienated from films because only one kind of film is being made.
Yeah. Last year we actually reviewed Kutakali. That's the first time I'd heard about the film. Also, I think all our reviewers are now called Aditya after you. That was also reviewed by another Aditya. But and again, it's just interesting to see that I didn't know that film had even come out if the reviewer hadn't pitched this review to us. And then
Yeah.
because his review came, a lot of us at Polis saw the film, and we also thought it was Suri's one of Suri's really good performances, but also the female lead was so powerful
Yeah.
on the screen. And again,
Yeah.
that really didn't kind of do the way with. I think Varsha is coming back. I think she's going to in a few more minutes. But Aditya, what was your take on the aesthetics part of it? I know that Varsha spoke about lack of aesthetics as being aesthetics itself. Is that
You mean in Bad Girl? Yeah, in Bad Bell, actually, this is something I wrote in my review. I think Varsha can add more to this, but the so we see Ramya's life in three stages, and the three stages actually have really distinct looks, and Varsha was conscious about this because they had three cinematographers for the different timelines, and I think one of the so if you have the teenage years, you get really like sun-kissed brightness in those times, like when you see her in school, when you see her at her home, and then you have the college years, which really have a bluish, melancholic tinge, and I think and the last part mostly occurs in the night time. So I think these were very conscious decisions that Varsha took, and like we just heard her talk about aesthetics. So she talked about lack of aesthetics, but I think her film is like designed beautifully, and it's very conscious effort considering she has three cinematographers and had one cinematographer look at each timeline as separately. So that really, I think, enriches the film in a big way.
Yeah, I think Varsha is still just trying to connect.
Uh,
I'm just seeing if there are other things, questions that we can take in the meantime. Aditya, and as a reviewer today, do you feel like you have platforms that can actually are okay with the film being reviewed critically?
I mean, there are platforms, but are they widely read and accessed or engaged with? I'm not sure. Um, I, I mean, like it's much easier to put out a review, right? Like anyone can. Now, like you have a mic and a couch podcast. Everybody is starting one, so you can like I think and people can just create their own spaces. But whether it's being engaged with and whether it advances cinema literacy and how we engage with cinema as a whole, I don't think that is happening. I think that is more of a that is still that's in fact deteriorating. I would say because we are more focused in how the movie is like promoted. Like promotions are a big thing, but once the film comes releases and then we just put out a review and then we are done. But I think a critical engagement with the film, especially mainstream films, I think it's really lacking today.
Yeah. Yes, Varsha's back. I'm so sorry, Varsha.
Still,
Welcome.
still issue. Yeah, sorry.
No, no, no. We actually have a lot of audience questions. And I think that also brings us to your third object, which is working as an AD, as
Mhm.
one of the things. And we also have an audience question from people who are watching you, who want, for all purposes, I can only interpret it as um, they want to know what it was like for you to work as an AD in Vada Chennai and share any crazy. Basically, they're asking you for gossip. But before we get there, tell us about your experience of wanting to become what was your experiences as being an AD?
Yeah. So, becoming an assistant director is the single most life changing thing that has ever happened to me. And that's why I had to put that down as an experience. Because until I was in college, so everything I'm telling you about how I've processed my childhood and college, it's not that those are things that I was acutely aware of while it happened to me. Those are things I have learned to process now. But the ability for critical thought only came much later. Like now that I look back at everything, all of the memories and everything I had growing up, I actually had no feelings towards it. There was a certain numbness which I've also tried to capture in the film, because I have spoken to a lot of my female friends and they also recall feeling similar feelings of numbness because of alienation and
Mhm.
the disconnect that you have. So it's only after I became an AD that I learned to name my feelings and name my thoughts. And it's like, sometimes when you read some kinds of political theory or even like filmmaking science type things just fall in place. Like it's not like you're learning something new, but you find the right words and sort of like everything is put in perspective of something that you have already known to be true. It's like, oh yeah, that makes sense. It's not like, oh, I never thought of that. It's more like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Oh, so that's what it was all about. So becoming an AD was one of those things for me. I learned all of my critical thought because I grew up with absolutely no political consciousness, or even, the ability to process my thoughts or feelings. It's only after Vetrimaran sir's team, on the other hand, is quite, the office is quite charged, and it's a very interesting setup for someone to be thrown into when they have absolutely no exposure to any of these things. I was 19 when I started working as an AD, fresh out of college, and yeah, as an AD, I learned everything, not just about cinema, but just what it means to be, just to be. So yeah, apart from my craft, I feel like I owe that space and my mentor so much, all of my life experiences and the kind of exposure I got even outside of cinema because of the kind of and about Vadachennai, right? So before Vadachennai, I also worked in Visaranai. One common theme in all of the films that I worked in, I was the only woman in the set. I was always the only female lady. Now he has another woman in his team. There's another girl working for him, but I was the only woman and the first woman that he ever worked with, because he didn't have any women in his team in the first few films. So I don't know. It's this idea of suddenly being thrown into a world that is so different from everything you've known all your life. It was so exciting. It was the first time I really felt alive. That numbness sort of left me, and I really felt alive. And I remember how alive I felt in this. That's the only word I can use to describe it. I really felt alive in a movie set, and I just knew I had to find a way to be good enough. I was really bad at my job initially. I was so dumb. I was so bad at it. But I just knew I had to figure out a way to get better at it so that I could keep doing this really fun job. And now I feel the same way about direction. It's just so much fun, like actual joy, which I can't say I have felt a lot in my life. So I feel like if there's just a way for me to sustain doing this for the rest of my life, I would be fine with it. you know?
We were just discussing this before you came back, about Tamil cinemas. Sometimes we feel that Tamil cinema is so progressive, but in reality, it is not so progressive. It has its own. It even sometimes even the most progressive of film sets can become very alienating for women. And you
Yeah.
talked about one. Your first half of it was also you talking about you being in this set and being politicized and learning. But also, what was it like to be the only woman in these spaces? What was it like? Because you're also teaching the set to behave differently, right? Because they also have to change because now there's a different person. Did that
Yeah.
happen? Can you also talk to us about that? Aditya, you wanted to come in?
No, I'll push about.
Yeah. So, definitely it was different for them also having a woman in the team, and it was a lot of learning for all of us. And I also think my brand of feminism tends to be very different from a lot of my other peers, because of where I learned it from also, because I learned it in the thick, in the midst of a lot of men. And also they are not necessarily bad human beings, and they're not even it's not even that their ideology is bad, but they do have bad feminist politics simply because just like how my caste politics was really bad at that time, they had really bad feminist politics. It's just a question of exposure. A lot of times it is a question of exposure, and it's about learning and evolving. And I'm very happy to say that I've had something of a positive impact in all of my friends' lives also there, because if not for me, it's likely they wouldn't have known how to talk to a woman. Like, they had no idea they were being offending, like they were being offensive when they were saying some things to me, like how they just didn't know. So I also don't I understand where the frustration comes from sometimes when we say it's not the woman's job to teach a man how to be, but how else are they going to learn? There is no, because these are people who've mostly uh, studied in boys' schools and they've never spoken to women. They don't know what it's like. And as an AD, I used to constantly beg my boss to, to the point of being a very annoying person. I would always tell him to write the female character this way or that way, or always complain about one thing or another. And he would always tell me, "Unga படத்துல நீங்க எல்லாம் பார்த்துக்கங்க." அப்படின்ட்டு, when you make a movie, you can do it for yourself. But I can say that a lot has changed from then till now. The conversation, people do evolve, artists do evolve, and
Right.
I think movies are not something that can be set in stone. I think a text also evolves. You just write it, you put it out there, it evolves along with the world around it, along with the society around it. I don't think we should look at it as something that's just, a
Mhm.
Bible thing and just follow it blindly. So artists also age, and art also ages and evolves.
Yeah.
Uh, like I have found that a lot of my experiences as an AD have taught me how to be empathetic towards people who I don't agree with, who don't agree with me, who don't have the same politics as me. And I think that's made me a slightly tolerant person. Like, I can watch an incredibly misogynistic film and not feel like I would just switch off, get bored maybe, but also still feel like, yeah, whatever, let him make his movie. Because yes, I do agree that it really impacts a lot of good work that a lot of people have worked very, very hard to achieve. And, it regresses a lot of positive developments. But I think the only thing that we can hope to change is create a space where more women can tell their stories, so that there is some balance, you
Yeah.
know, just to sort of cancel out male
Yeah.
toxicity by having a little bit of feminine toxicity. And that's what I have attempted to do in Bad Girl.
Yeah. Aditya, did you want to come in? I feel
Yeah,
like.
I just thought it was interesting you said that there was a feeling of alienation as you
Yeah.
before you went on a film set, and then so I just wanted to ask you about how being the only woman on a set like that, was that a different kind of alienation, or is that something that you dealt with?
It was not just alienation, it's a lot of conflicting and very problematic things I felt. Because also, remember how I said when I was in school and then I went to college, a girls' college really taught me how
Yeah.
to, about sisterhood and female friendships, and I looked at everything differently. I think as an AD and as the only woman in a set, I think I became a little bit more toxic because of that, because you get so used to not having any other women around. It's not natural. These kind of
Mm.
unnatural situations can sort of, it's not just alienation. Yeah, sure, there was loneliness. I wish I could have just had like a lot of women around to talk to and that sort of a thing. But and of course, like sexism, because your colleagues don't know how to treat you. But outside of all of that, I think, this whole psychological experience of being the only person in a room, I always told myself as an AD that when I made my own film, I would have a lot of women in the team. But the truth is, I had not worked with anybody all my adult life. I had not reported to any women. I didn't have any women reporting to me. I didn't have any female colleagues. I actually didn't know how to work with women. I discovered when I made Bad Girl that I had acquired so much internalized misogyny, being the only girl in a team, where it was, I had to get over a lot of that while
Yeah.
making Bad Girl. Because when you start working as an AD, you want to be as good as all of the guys. So you're wearing your loose t-shirts, pretending like you don't have boobs, cutting your hair short. This is the longest my hair's been. As an AD, I used to keep my hair really short, and I wanted to look like a guy, talk like a guy, be a guy, because I wanted to be as good as all the men. So that's in my early 20s. And all of those things don't just go away. And it is quite unnatural. So when it actually was my turn and I had some kind of power to form a team, and I had a lot of women I worked with, I learned so many things about myself
Mhm.
in that. process. And it was not just one glorious chick flick making this film. It's not that having a lot of women automatically meant that we had amazing chemistry. No, there was a lot of conflict. There were a
Right.
lot of contradictions and a lot of issues for us to wade through, because these are not problems I had anticipated. I always thought I would just be amazing if I worked with women. But the fact remains, we got through all of those conflicts and we've got an amazing working equation now. But it took a lot of work.
Yeah.
Especially for me, it took a lot of work. A lot of the younger girls who came to work in the team had exposure to working with other women, because the newer
Mhm.
AD who work with a lot of women. It's quite common. But for me, it was very new and strange and
Yeah.
quite a bit of a challenge, actually. Because when you do like growing up, you're always taught to compete with other women, right? And these are
Yes.
not things people actually teach you about, right? That you have to actively try not to be the person. It's okay if you're not the prettiest girl in the room. It's okay if you're not the smartest person in the room. It's okay for if you're not getting all of the attention.
Right.
uh, so it takes a while for us to also unlearn everything. And yeah.
Yeah. I think Varsha, I think what you described, Rhea, I think is a very and this is why I love these conversations, because we do not know where these conversations go. And I think what you said was a very honest accounting of my own experiences of
Yeah.
being the only woman in rooms that I've been in. And when I started Polis and I said, okay, what am I going to do differently? Because I didn't want to replicate the same toxic environments that I had been exposed to as a young woman. I realized that building a non toxic work environment is far harder than going
Yeah.
through one. And often you have to unlearn your own bullshit that you've been taught, even when you're trying really hard. And often, sometimes conflicts among women are also conflicts that one has to resolve. So I really appreciate that you are so completely candid about this, and that brings
Oh,
us
and
to
I've also spoken to the female members in my team about it. We've had conversations, and there have been conversations with Anjali where we'd both go back and we've had nasty fights, and then we'd go back and realize both of us were on our periods, and like we were both cranky. So these are not things you prepare for,
right,
you know, when you're working with women.
or even
And
acknowledging that one has the human body and the mind goes through different things, and yeah, okay,
yeah, that. And also, like, I have only had examples of how to be a boss and how to be a director from men that I have
right,
seen in the sets, right? And I don't know how to be a woman and still be in power. I had to figure it out for myself because I haven't seen it. Right now I'm in Mumbai promoting the Hindi version of Bad Girl, and there was a screening for women in films, WIF, and there were so many women technicians under one roof. I have never seen so many female technicians under one roof in Chennai. There are just
right.
don't have that collective thing, right? So there are so many women here. So I'm like, hey, maybe if I had had more exposure to that, I wouldn't have been such a dick to work with. If I had just grown up with that, I think I would have been a very different person.
Yeah. No, I think what I value as we grow is that we're all not born completely political beings, right? If
Yeah.
we believe that people can change for worse, we should believe that people can, and artists, especially artists, should change, at least politically, for the best.
And
And
sometimes politics and emotional intelligence are really like concentric circles, right? Like they're one and the same, I feel.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And that brings us to the fourth object, which is Arundhati Roy's God of Small Thing. Assuming
Yeah.
you were also in school when the book came out.
I was in school, but I read it much later when I was in college. Yeah.
So tell us about Roy's God of Small Things, and why that book of all the other books.
It's the most life-changing book I've ever read. I had when I made a list, there were like 20, movies and books, and including Abbas Kiarostami's A Separation. It's the most influential film to me, but I had to shortlist it, right? So why Arundhati Roy? Because I feel like uh, that is a book. Each time I read it very differently, based on my state of mind, and I understand a new layer. I When I first read it, the politics went completely over my head. I didn't understand any of it. I just understood the human drama, and I found it very interesting. And the second time I read it, was a few years later, I gathered a little bit of extra information. So, the book just evolved along with me, and I think almost every character that I write has a little shade of the twins
Okay.
in it. I think it's just something that has impacted me very, very deeply.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
so I was in school when the book came out, and I realized much later that I read the film too early in my life. Like I was 16, I was in 11th standard, and that's not the time to be reading a lot of small things.
Or
And
you could
it
reread
really,
it later.
yeah, it really speaks to you much like differently when you evolve in all different facets that you can. And it's interesting you said God of Small Things because the mother and the child relationship is so important to the novel and it's very important to your movie. So I wonder if some of it just creeps in from there.
Yeah, and I think until then, I had never even considered the possibility of a messed up mother. When you
right.
grow up with, mainstream content, every mother is perfect. She never does anything wrong.
Yeah.
So I think it's the first time there was a mother who was also vulnerable, a mother who is also in pain. These are things that had never even crossed my
Hmm.
mind until I read that book. And yeah, it just continues to amaze me each time I read it.
Yeah.
And actually, when I was talking to my friend who's not very clued in on things yesterday, I told him this was my list. He asked me, "Oh, why do all of you girls like this book? What is so great about it?" He's a filmmaker.
Is there a thing like girls like the book? I don't know.
I don't know. It's a stereotype he invented for me. But he's like, "Why do all of you girls like the book?" And I thought about it. Why do I like the book so much? It's beyond liking. It's a sort of when you just feel very connected to a work of art. Like you see so much of yourself in everything. I think the first time that ever happened to me was that book. It would be very strange to call that book relatable, but
Right.
it was oddly.
Yeah.
I
Uh,
think it's one of those books that at least for as we grew up in 90s and maybe early 2000s, it's one of those first novels that you read, which is like very distinctly Indian, and also like it's the first time you're reading an epic novel
Yeah,
that's set in a milieu that is very familiar to you, but also you're learning new things about the same milieu that you're growing up in. So I think it works in different ways, and I think it like I read in different age groups, like so it works differently in different times also. Yeah.
yeah. But I think for a lot of us growing up, as you said, the mother is perfect, right? I remember growing up and at least in the 90s, there's a song that Yesudas sings with Rajinikanth in it, which is called Amma and Radhika, like where his like mom is, and you see that, and the mother is always perfect. She's chaste. She's all sacrificing. She's all knowledge. And then you realize that our parents are, they're mortals.
they're
They're not
human
perfect.
beings.
They're
Yeah,
humans. They're mortals. They might be good, but they're also flawed, just as all of us are.
yeah,
But also Roy's other book has come, like her book
yeah.
of Mother has come out, and I started reading it, and I was just like, shit, it brings up a lot of stuff because we all have
I
these.
haven't read it yet. I can't wait to read it.
Yeah, I
I'm
have
just
it. I haven't read it. Yeah.
I read it, and I'm just like, I don't know if I can move forward. But it's also this.
on the day of my release, my DOP gifted it to me because I have been whining about how I haven't read anything. My third DOP, Preeta Jayaraman, gifted me the book, and I cannot wait to start reading it.
Yeah. No, it was. I don't know. Like I'm having a lot of issues are coming up for me as well. I know the fact that one, the book has been published by Penguin. I know that Roy has like a long history of pro-Palestinian stance, but I'm also like, why are you publishing this with Penguin? I started reading the book, and it's so raw and visceral, and um, I don't know. It brings up a lot, and I think that's also the point of great writing, right? That it brings
Yeah,
up so much for you.
yeah.
Um, we are past the 1 hour mark, and I know that we haven't done the last object. Varsha, do you have time to stay with us? And we also know that there are lots of audience questions that's come in.
Yeah, I
Uh,
have. Let's do it.
okay, let's do it. Okay, the last object, which is about films themselves. You have mentioned you have Sofia Coppola, and then you want to start with Sofia Coppola and then go. Yeah. Yeah, you why these two films? Why Sofia Coppola?
So I watched Sofia Coppola's Virgin Suicides, and I can tell you that my film language and my visual language is impacted by Sofia Coppola like no other filmmaker. And you know, she's just invented this feminine aesthetic. Uh, it's just so girly, it's so beautiful, it's so pleasing to the eye. Uh, and at the same time so real, it just hits you, you know, it just really hits you, her frames really hit you. And I also think she's one of the few filmmakers who's really sure there are a lot. I like chick flicks generally. I really like watching chick flicks, and that is something. It took me. Okay, actually, you know what? I want to tell you how I grew to become this person who's comfortable saying I like chick flicks, right? Because being an AD, especially you know, a slightly politically and intellectually charged environment, you are also expected to be an intellectual, which I was not. I was anything but I also feel like my rebellion is the absence of intellect, the way that patriarchy tells us what
Mhm.
intelligence is, right? So for me, a big part of my politics is goofiness, it's silliness, it's being human, right? Not taking oneself so seriously, because you know you're supposed to speak in a low voice, you're supposed to have that, you know, thing going. I'm so sorry, I have to just turn off the phone or it's going to keep ringing.
Yeah. Uh, Aditya, will you take the other question about Agnes Varda's Vagabond that was also mentioned?
Sorry. Yeah.
Yes, yes.
So yeah. So uh, I felt so I there was a lot of pressure to just be someone who, oh, I only watch Tarkovsky and world movies sort of a thing, to be taken seriously, and I played that part quite faithfully for a while. And then this thing happened. I think it was around COVID lockdown, where we were watching a lot of films in solitude. It was no longer a communal activity, so you were just watching what you actually wanted to watch. There was no FOMO, there was no like watching it with people or even talking to people about what you watched anymore. And at that point, I started watching a lot of rom-coms, a lot of chick flicks, and I realized I only liked watching stuff with a lot of women in it, made by women. And you know, I realized that it's what my heart really wanted. And it takes, sometimes it can be very challenging, especially when you're working in a certain industry, to have creative freedom to choose what you really want to watch, right? So I think that happened for me in this solitude of COVID lockdown. And that's when I realized these are the only films I actually want to watch. It's been a while, and I was very happy to discover that all my life I would like mentally switch off, zone out when I'm watching action movies that I'm supposed to enjoy, you know, like all of these big budget films that are supposed to be some landmark cinematic achievement. You're supposed to enjoy it, but it makes absolutely no sense to me. Like I can't even process those shots. They're
Yeah.
moving too fast for my ADHD mind. I can't even like process them. So it makes no sense to me. And I think I feel like a burden has been lifted off my shoulders the minute I discovered that I don't actually have to watch any of those movies. And I finally, you know, gathered the courage and strength to say, hey, you know, I only like girly movies.
Yeah.
So, and discovering Sofia Coppola as a sort of an idol also happened along with that for me, where I realized that that is something that was actually very pleasing to my senses, and it didn't come from external pressure at all. It just came from within, and it also helped me discover my own voice as an artist in the kind of stories I wanted to tell. And you know, until then, the stuff I had written was all brain. There was no heart. You know,
Mhm.
uh, it was all like trying to follow a certain rule book about what works and what people would want to watch. But after I actually discovered what I liked watching, I also started writing from the heart. It and Agnes Varda's Vagabond and Sofia Coppola's mainly Marie Antoinette. Marie Antoinette has also. I never thought you could tell a period drama with so much irreverence and you know
And
so
so
much
much style. Yeah.
such style. It's such a cool film, you know. And also, I have always thought I'm a pretty cool person, and all of the women in my life are really cool people. But our stories are often sob stories or stories about trauma. It's like there's so much like, you know, it's like, "Whoa." But like, I just wanted to like, where is the lightness?
Hmm.
Yes, there is a lot of trauma to being attached to being a certain gender, but
Yeah.
there is also a lot of lightness. And I feel like, you know, the more women are allowed to discover their own inner lightness, even in the darkest of times, I feel like we can find our voices a lot better. And yeah, so for me, that's where my love for Sofia Coppola comes from.
Yeah, and it's interesting what you say about the whole, the intellectual debate. Well, I think that it's really about, it's not being about being anti chick flick. It's about how even chick flick, you can have an intellectual discussion about chick flick. You can
Exactly.
have intellectual discussions about so many things. So
Exactly.
it's about, yeah, it's about getting out of your that sort of a
Yeah.
boneheadedness that only these things can be intellectual. These rom-com cannot be intellectual. So that sort of thing, that's what you need to unlearn basically when and everyone goes through that. The other thing again, I want to go back to uh, like you loving films of Coppola and Agnes Varda. Actually, those films are sort of about feeling alienated and feeling alone. Like you have Virgin Suicide, you have Mary Antoinette, you have or even Vagabond. Like it's a lovely film. I'm so glad you said Vagabond. And that film, when I was thinking about it, like you have Sandrine Bonier's character, and she was 18 at the time, and she is 18 in the film as well. And it could be titled, "Bad Girl." Like that film is about what people perceive her to be, and it sort of comes from an external point of view. Like it's not, we don't really exactly get to know her, but we get to know her through what other people think about her. So that was a
Exactly.
really good choice that you made.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Vagabond is also a very big influence on Bad Girl and almost everything I write, because it's just such out of box thinking for me. Because whenever we're writing something, anything, right, men or women, when we put something out there, it's almost like, especially because cinema is mass communication in a way that really impacts you. There's always a question of, so are you trying to say that women should be like this, or are you trying to say this is how people should be? No, I'm telling a story. There is
Right.
a world of difference between telling a story, and of course gaze matters. Who you're laughing at, who you're yelling at, who you're comforting, the gaze matters. But what is really important is for us to also speak about things that are taboo, right? And speak about things that may be considered messed up. So like in Vagabond, it is a story that has an unhappy ending for a woman who wants to be free, but it is so void of judgment. It's like you're literally seeing other people's judgment of a girl, and one would assume it really exposes who you are. It's one of those films, how you see it says a lot about who you are, as opposed to what the protagonist is, because she never gets to tell her story in the movie. You're just
Yeah.
seeing her. It's a sort of a docu-fiction style hybrid filmmaking, so experimental. I think it's one of those films where when I made Bad Girl, when I started writing Bad Girl, I had one thing in mind where I wanted to show a girl making all kinds of mistakes and still surviving. Because we're always, I think the biggest problem with growing up in a conservative background is, there's, we call it poocha andikada. There's always a monster lurking somewhere
Yeah.
that's going to come and pounce at you, and that fear is supposed to hold you back from making mistakes. But I think making mistakes can be a glorious thing when, you know, when your elders haven't exactly lived it up. Their wisdom does not help you. You have to make your own mistakes and figure it out. The rule books that work for your mother and your grandmother don't work for you. You have to go figure it out for yourself. So yeah, that's what Vagabond meant for me. It's that a girl can make mistakes and, you know, die in the most horrific way, and people are going to say what they're going to say, but you still have to seek your freedom and whatever that means for yourself. You cannot you cannot just imitate another person's definition of freedom.
But also, I actually saw Vagabond when you mentioned it because I'd forgotten the last half of the film. And then I also realized that maybe I know the story is told through others' perspective. Maybe her letting go and saying, I'm done, is also a choice. I know that we feel that there's also this theme to be of somehow resilience, and never letting go is also,
Yeah, yeah,
sometimes it's okay for
yeah,
people to let go. It's okay in the sense that maybe it was her choice to say, well, I'm in this ditch and I'm not going to, this is it, I've done everything. And
yeah,
that could also, no, not, I mean, again, I can see that I'm also interesting, my own way into it. But Varsha, I think we are in the end of this conversation, and I think the one thing that I did want to ask you, um, and in some ways, you also started by talking about how, as this is not a commercial film, or what defines success. Um, for me, a film like Bad Girl, and I think we talked about it a little bit, a rom com is also for me a reflection of the zeitgeist, and rom coms are told across time, across geographies.
yeah.
What was the success of this film for you in terms of just getting the story out? What would you consider the successes of that film like Bad Girl today exists, and exists in today, in a world where we also have other films, that not only rob but cannibalize the female gaze. So, what is the success of Bad Girl for you?
It's the sheer number of women who reached out to me and told me that they understood their mothers better. It's the sheer number of women who've told me that they hugged their mother for the first time, because that's something we've lost touch with. We don't know. We're so awkward about expressing affection to our parents, especially in the Indian society. Control as a form of affection is just so messed up, and that's the only kind of love we know. So I feel like for me, the biggest success is the number of people who felt touched. And a lot of girls said they took their mom to watch the movie. For me, someone who likes movies more than anything, I find that I have absolutely nothing to do with my own mother. And because the movies that come out are not suited for her, they just don't like watching any of it. And
Mhm.
the stuff that is made in the West makes her very uncomfortable because there are explicit lovemaking scenes, and she would just turn her face away. So I just wanted to make something that mothers and daughters can watch together. And for me, that's really my success, because I think a lot of mothers and daughters have watched it. And yes, theatrically, I wish it had done better, for my producer, for my poor producer. But I'm still happy that a lot of people will watch it in OTT, because I think the movie theater still is an elusive space for women. I remember when I was a kid and I would want to go for a movie first day, my mother would always ask me, "Is there a boy coming with you?" Because you do need a chaperone to go, because you will get crow, because there's going to be men who are drunk when they come to watch their heroes movies, and the movie is going to have things that goad them into being mean to women.
Right.
Almost all of these hero films, when you go to the theater, you're made to feel acutely scared of the fact that they tell you it's not your space, right?
Right.
So you have to wear a dupatta when you go to theaters. You have to make sure that there's men surrounding you when you go to certain shows. So for me, it's that I just wanted to create a space where women could go to the theaters and reclaim that space as ours, which didn't entirely happen. But I also don't think it needs to happen overnight. It can be a process. I just hope that more women get to tell these stories, and more of these films get made so that we can go to the theaters, because I think as a communal activity, film watching is so important. It's not the same watching it on your laptop, on your TV at home. We don't even watch TV together. Everybody has a TV in their room, and most people are watching it on their phones. I think film watching as a communal activity is so healing, and I think part of the reason why so many of us are so unhappy right now, like deeply unhappy right now, is because there aren't good films coming out to watch together. When was the last time you watched something and that was made in our country and felt like your heart was full because the movie's so good? It
Mhm.
doesn't happen very often anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, I blame the multiplex culture and studios, big studios, and also the fact that right now there are a Marvel movie release getting dubbed in Tamil and releasing can impact
Mhm.
how your theatrical run. You could be a small film made here, but like, a random Marvel movie being dubbed and released in Tamil can actually affect your theatrical run. So these are complicated times we live in.
Yeah.
That's actually what I was telling Suchitra when you were when you were like when you had a brief connection issue. I was telling her that we need more movies like Batgirl, and we because we made very same kind of film. Like we made a habit of making the same kind of film. We kind of alienated a huge section of audience, and only if we make more films like Batgirl and something different, that we would have new audience coming into theaters, and those will start doing well. So, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Varsha, that does bring us to the end of the segment. But two things. I want to say that we've had so many comments and questions and just pure joy and love for you from our audience, which means that I'm going to try and get all of these comments and send them to you as an email so that you have all of them. You have questions about the cameras that you use, people are asking you to talk about different films, and I've never seen this genuine love for the craft and the film and the questions that are coming your way. So we are going to get those questions too, even though if you cannot answer them, I think you would be really glad to kind of see those questions. But finally, the way for Five Objects podcast also works is that you're starting off the third series of our Five Objects circle, which means that the first person we interview picks the next person, and so on and so forth. So now that your conversation is coming to an end, who would you like to be the next guest for this show? And also, who would you like to actually answer the five objects question?
I really like Terukural Arivu. I think Enjoy Anjami is one of the coolest things I've heard in the recent past. So I would love it if he would do this podcast.
Okay, so we are going to reach out to Arivu and we're going to share this entire conversation, and we're going to tell him that Varsha Bharath says you are the next person, and hopefully, fingers crossed, he will say
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
Varsha, thank you so much. Aditya, concluding remarks, and then we will close it all up.
Yes, thank you so much. And like I already told you, we loved Batgirl, and how good it was. Like we can't wait for what you make next.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Varsha. Bye.
Bye. Bye.